Welcome to the Deep Dive, where we really get into the good stuff in your reading list.
That's right.
Yeah.
We're all about taking those fascinating ideas and really bringing them to the surface.
And today we are diving into a topic that's all about those early days of romance.
You know, those heart-fluttering, sometimes awkward first encounters.
Exactly. And the source material for this deep dive is intriguing in itself.
Oh, definitely. So we've got excerpts from a fictional podcast.
And that podcast has been analyzing this book called The Girl Who Stole My Heart.
Yeah, so we're getting these really interesting layers of interpretation.
It's like we're analyzing an analysis.
Exactly. It's like we're holding up a mirror to a mirror.
Okay, so let's jump right into it. This fictional podcast introduces us to Jackson.
Our protagonist.
Right, and he's fresh out of exams, and suddenly he's like, I need a girlfriend.
It's that classic post-exam, what's next phase of life.
Totally. Like, as soon as you check off one box, you immediately start looking for the next one.
And for Jackson, that next box is finding the most beautiful girl in town.
But thankfully, the fictional podcast, they kind of dig a little deeper than that surface level, right?
Yeah, for sure. They challenge this whole notion of needing a girlfriend.
It's like, is it really about finding the one?
Or is it more about what having a girlfriend represents?
I see what you mean. Like, at this point in his life, he's on the verge of adulthood.
He's probably facing all sorts of expectations about what that should look like.
And a girlfriend in this context, it's less about a genuine connection and more about fitting into this mold of success.
Yeah. Like, society hands you this pre-written script, and he's feeling the pressure to follow it.
Totally. But here's where things get interesting. Enter Jessie.
Who is?
She's described as this captivating, almost magnetic presence.
Ooh, I like it.
Yeah, like everyone stops and stares when she walks into a room.
Total movie moment.
Right. And of course, Jackson is instantly smitten.
Love at first sight.
Well, the fictional podcast plays with that trope a bit.
How so?
Because even though Jessie has this undeniable allure, she totally shuts down Jackson's attempts to talk to her.
Ouch.
Yeah, not once, but twice.
He must have been mortified.
Well, the podcast mentions he does get in a witty comeback, so that's something.
Okay, so he's got some game then.
Right. Even in the face of rejection, he keeps a sense of humor.
Always a good sign.
Makes you kind of root for him, you know?
I can see that. You just know there's more to him than meets the eye.
Okay, so just as we're starting to get into Jackson's head, trying to figure out this need for a girlfriend.
Plot twist.
Exactly. Guess who comes knocking?
Jessie. No way.
Yeah. And not just a casual, hey there. She's at his doorstep wanting to go on a date.
Wow, talk about a turnaround.
I know, right? She even apologizes for her behavior.
So now we're left wondering, what's her deal? What's motivating this sudden change of heart?
Right. It's like she's playing a game, and we're all trying to figure out the rules.
And that's where the second chapter we have comes in. Social differences.
Which is where the real intrigue begins, right?
Absolutely. So we learn that Jessie comes from a wealthy family, very cultured.
A stark contrast to Jackson's own background.
Night and day. And this is where the fictional podcast really starts to unpack things.
Because now it's not just about two people connecting.
It's about navigating those invisible lines drawn by social class, wealth.
All those unspoken expectations that come with it.
Precisely. And the podcast even hints that Jessie's privileged upbringing might be playing a role in her initial attempts to embarrass Jackson.
Oh, interesting. So it's like she's used to being in control.
Especially with someone like Jackson.
So her brushing him off might not have been personal.
Maybe not. It might have been her way of maintaining a certain image or dynamic.
I see. It's fascinating how our upbringing can shape our behavior in even those subtle ways.
For sure. But Jackson, true to his character, he doesn't back down.
He doesn't.
Nope. He sees right through her facade and refuses to be intimidated.
Which leads to that wonderfully awkward first date.
Oh, tell me more.
So she invites him out, insists on paying.
Of course.
And he flat out refuses.
Oh, he didn't?
He did. It's this clash of wills, but it's also a microcosm of those bigger social dynamics.
Totally. They're stuck in this intricate dance. It's not just about their feelings for each other.
It's about the weight of their differences, right?
Like they're speaking different languages even when they're saying the same words.
And that's where we'll leave it for now.
You know, it's funny picking up on that whole social differences thing.
Yeah.
The podcast really highlights that.
Yeah.
And not just as like a plot device.
Right.
It's like this character in itself almost.
Totally. This invisible force field surrounding them.
Exactly. Like shaping their perceptions of each other.
Their assumptions, everything.
Even those awkward attempts at connection.
Oh, absolutely.
Like that scene where she takes him to that fancy restaurant.
Oh, yeah.
Thinking she's probably impressing him.
That scene was perfect.
Yeah, and the podcast totally nailed it,
Is
right?
it because instead of, like, bringing them closer?
It just pushes them further apart.
Exactly.
Yeah.
He's so uncomfortable, out of place.
And she means well.
You can tell she does.
But it just shows how good intentions can fall flat when you don't really get someone's experiences, you know?
Totally. And the podcast does a good job of not, like, demonizing her for her privilege.
Exactly.
It's more like pointing out the blind spots.
Which we all have, right?
Oh, for sure. I mean, we've all been there where our background or whatever shapes our views, and we don't even realize it.
Yeah. It's so true. And I think that's what makes this whole analysis so insightful.
Mm-hmm.
It really encourages empathy.
It does.
You know, to see beyond just those surface level differences.
Totally. It's like remembering there's a bigger picture, these societal structures that are kind of subtly at play.
Subtly influencing everything.
And this podcast, even though it's focusing on this seemingly lighthearted romance, they do such a good job of connecting it back to these bigger themes of class and privilege.
They do. It's like they're holding up a mirror to society, in a way.
A little bit.
Making us think about our own biases.
Absolutely.
And those preconceived notions we all have.
For sure. And they do it in such an engaging way.
They do.
Like, I love how they weave in those real-world examples.
Yeah, makes it so relatable.
Exactly. Suddenly it's not just fiction anymore. It's like, oh, I've seen this play out in real life.
Exactly.
So we have this dynamic, right? This attraction, chemistry.
Yeah.
But these huge social barriers.
Huge, yeah.
How do they navigate this?
Right. That's the million-dollar question.
Because, and I love how they do this.
What's that?
The podcast, they leave us hanging.
Oh, they do.
Right at this turning point.
The worst. Or the best, I guess.
So we're left wondering, will they bridge the gap or
crash and burn?
Exactly. But they do give us some clues about what might happen.
Like what?
Well, they keep pointing out that despite their differences, both Jackson and Jesse seem drawn to each other's authenticity.
I like that.
Like he refuses to play her game. And she seems intrigued by that.
By him being, what, like confident?
Yeah, like he's not intimidated by her world.
Right, right. It all comes back to that title.
The girl who stole my heart.
Yeah, exactly. There's more to her than meets the eye. Right?
Totally. She's not just a spoiled rich girl.
There's got to be more there.
And on the flip side, I think the podcast suggests that maybe Jackson's desire for a girlfriend, it comes from this deeper longing for connection. I see someone who sees him, not his background.
Right. It's not about checking off boxes.
Exactly. It's about shattering those expectations and finding someone real.
Forging your own path together. That's what makes this story so compelling, you know.
Totally. It's a real exploration of
what?
Love, class, all those complexities.
Absolutely. A world that tries to define those things for us.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, wow, we covered some serious ground here.
I know, right? We started with a guy wanting a girlfriend.
And ended up talking about, like, societal structures and
invisible forces.
It's amazing, though, how, like, young love, it can be this gateway to these deeper conversations.
It's so true. And I think that's what I love about this podcast.
Mm-hmm.
They don't shy away from those layers.
It's like they took this, I don't know, kind of cliche scenario and revealed all this depth.
The hidden depth.
I don't know if I would have thought about it this way. It's just reading the book myself.
Me neither, actually. It's like having a friend who's read it be like,
yes,
but did you catch this?
Exactly.
Those aha moments.
Yes. And speaking of, this whole deep dive, it makes me actually want to read the original book.
Right.
Which is kind of funny, right?
Totally.
Because we're analyzing an analysis.
It's true, though. It just shows you the power of a good story.
It does.
It makes you want to dig deeper.
For sure. Like, it's almost like we got this sneak peek into these characters, these themes.
A little glimpse behind the curtain. Makes you want to see the whole show.
It does. Okay, so as we wrap up here, any key takeaways for our listeners?
Oh, that's a good question. I think the biggest one is just remembering that relationships, they're rarely simple.
Never are.
Right. There's so much influencing them.
Social factors, personal baggage.
All of it. We're like talking webs of influence.
We are. And we bring that into every interaction.
So true. So, yeah, just be mindful of that. You know,
I love that.
In your own life, in the stories you consume.
Yes. Look beyond the surface.
Always more than meets the eye.
Okay, so one thing I've been thinking about, that title, The Girl Who Stole My Heart.
Oh, Oh!
It's interesting, right?
It is. It's like she's taking something from him.
Almost like this power dynamic already.
Right. Like, is she really stealing? Or is he giving it away?
Exactly. Yeah. I'm curious to see how the book handles that.
Me too.
Especially with their different backgrounds.
Yeah, all those layers.
So many questions.
The best kind of ending. Right.
It is. The kind that makes you think. Well, on that note, this has been quite a deep dive.
It has.
We explored love, class.
All through this fictional lens.
So fascinating. Until next time, everyone.
Happy reading.
Keep those pages turning.